Should you send your cards to SGC or PSA? Let's talk about it. Now, one of the things that I do here on the page is a lot of grade reveals. I do it for my card business. It's a great way to make money on sports cards. But I always get the question of, why did you decide to send this one to SGC, or why did you send the submission to PSA? So I thought it'd be good to go through and break down the two different grading companies, pros, the cons, and give some perspective so that you can make a well-informed decision. So SGC versus PSA, the ultimate showdown. We've got three main factors or categories that we want to consider. Those are your cost. How much does it cost to get your cards graded with each company? Turnaround time. How quickly does it get back to you? And then finally, what is the overall market value once the card has been graded? Now, PSA is a little more complicated than SGC. They've got a lot more different service levels, a lot more challenges with declared value. We're going to talk about that. Generally, though, the cheapest that you can get is if you're doing a trading card game, Pokemon, Lorcana, Magic, etc. You can do that for $15 per card, 45 business day turnaround time. Now, the max insured value, that is your declared value. You can see that over here. Declared value is what the value of the card is after it's been graded. So this is important because if anything were to happen to your card, either during the grading process or when it gets shipped back to you, that's how much the card is going to be insured for. So this matters because if PSA deems the card is worth more than that maximum insured value, they will actually upcharge you for more money based on the value of the card. Now, if you're sending in sports cards, which, let's be honest, that's what I do mostly, you're looking at cheapest at the $18.99 per card tier. Now, there's one big asterisk there, and that's that you have to be a Collectors Club member. It's the same thing for the trading card game one, but again, the reason for that, or the challenge there, is that there's a paywall. You need to pay like $100 for the year to get access to this cheaper grading tier. Now, for me, it's worth it. Basically, at $100, you're saving $6 per card compared to the value, which is it's the exact same service. It just is $6 per card cheaper. So for me, it's worth it to do that. You can generally get a cheaper value price if you send it through a group submitter, but I like to personally send my own cards. I think that it helps me figure out what works well, what doesn't work well, what I can get away with in grading, what I can't get away with. It also limits the amount of times that I have to ship the card, the number of hands that it goes through. When I send off my cards, I always get a little anxious, worried about whether or not, something's going to happen to the card. And the less people that have to handle it between me and the grader, the better. So with these three tiers, these are your three kind of cheaper value tiers. Generally 45 business days. That's 2 to 3 months generally. I find that it's generally 6 to 8 weeks in general. Now, if you need things quicker, you can pay more. Or if you have cards that are more valuable. The Value Plus tier, $40 per card. That's the same max insured value, but you're going to get it back in 20 business days. So you're basically just paying $40 to get it back in a month, essentially. Now, granted, I will say PSA tends to outperform their estimated turnaround time, like the regular tier here at $75 a card. That 10 business days, I find to be more like 5 to 6, but you should expect that turnaround time that they're telling you, not for them to be faster. If you want to get it in 5 business days, you're getting up to a higher insured value at $2,500, but you're paying $130 per card. As you go up even more, Super Express, $5,000 per card value, walkthrough, $10,000, and they have even higher tiers, crazy high-end stuff where they're charging you a percentage of the card or literally thousands of dollars if it's a crazy expensive card. But let's be honest, you and I are probably not doing that. Quick interjection here, literally the day after filming this video, PSA announced that they changed some of their service pricing. Here's the update. TCG is going up $2, Bulk is going up $1, Express is going up $20, Super Express going up $50, and then walkthrough service is going up $100 in pricing. So overall, I don't think it changes that much, but be aware that pricing has gone up. Now, let's compare these two. SGC. SGC's is a lot simpler. Basically, as long as your card is less than $1,500, it's $15 to grade, period. You don't need a membership. You don't need to do anything. And it's going to generally take them 5 to 10 business days to grade your cards at that standard tier. Now, if your card is worth above $1,500 and you want it in that standard turnaround time, that 5 to 10 days, then it becomes $85 to grade that. If you want immediate service, which is PSA's, Super Express, walkthrough, etc., for a less than $1,500 card, it's going to be $40, and then it kind of goes up as the value of the card goes up from an insurance perspective. So In general, I think most of us are playing in the $15 per card range. At worst, you're getting that $85, but if you got a $3,500 card, the $85 is probably worth it. Plus, we're going to talk about that and whether or not you should send a card that expensive to SGC. But let's do a market deep dive, because what's the difference between PSA and SGC? Obviously, they have different slabs, which we're going to see here in a second, but what's the difference when all is said and done? So the first card we're going to look at is a Ellie De La Cruz Prism Refractor 10. Both are gem mint cards. You got the SGC 10, you got the PSA 10. Now the PSA 10 does $70 to $80. The SGC 10 does $40 to $60. So if you get on the high end versus the low end of comps there, you could get potentially double your value. Now, I think it's more, the $40 comp in my opinion was decently low, and I think there were more $70 comps for the PSA 10 than there were $80 comps. So I would generally say it's a $15 to $20 difference there. Now you're paying $4 a card more, but getting $15 to $20 more, that's a $15 swing in profit. Let's look at another example. Juan Soto on his Topps Chrome base card out of 2018 Topps Chrome. PSA 10, $80 to $90, SGC 10, $50 to $60. So basically the same gap there as the Ellie De La Cruz. Different year, different card, but this card has a more established market, which is why I thought that it was another good one to look at. Let's jump up a little higher tier in terms of value now. Shohei Ohtani, Bowman Chrome Rookie. Very, very nice card. These do very solid numbers. PSA 10 does $900 to $950. The SGC 10 does $725 to $800. Now, that's closer. There's not as large of a variance and gap there. Granted, $725 to $950, that's a pretty big gap, but the $800 to $900, you're getting closer. Plus, given the fact that this is over a $500 card, in theory, you're also having to pay more to get this card graded with PSA, which does matter. Final example here, jumping out of the baseball realm for a second, because I know that I do a lot of baseball, but I know that there are other sports out there. Joe Burrow, Optic Hollow, PSA 10. Thought this was a good one to look at because the Bengals are out of the playoffs. His market is not going to go up and down depending on if there was a recent playoff loss, win, etc. It's pretty set. He had a really solid end of the season, played very well, but the Bengals couldn't get there. So his market is generally what it is. PSA 10 does $300 to $350. SGC 10 does $200 to $300. Generally was in the $250 to $300 range, but there were comps at $200, so I wanted to be fair there. So again, there's a gap, no question. But, and this is the big thing for me, what is your opportunity cost? And that basically means is what does it take to, turnaround time, get these cards back, etc. With SGC, let's say you buy a card at $15. We're using basically this Ellie De La Cruz Prism Refractor PSA or SGC 10 as our example. It's a $10 to $15 card. I figured let's call it 15 because probably got to pay more to get one that's well centered, good quality, etc. You buy it for $15. You spend $15 to get it graded with SGC. You get it back in 2 weeks, roughly. You're going to get $50 in market value back on that. So that means that you profit $20 off of that card. Compare that to PSA. You buy the card for $15. You spend $19 to grade it, 6 to 8 weeks to get that back, and you're going to get $75 for that. So you're going to profit $41. You just profited more than double what you would have done with SGC, with one major asterisk though. And that's that you're able to repeat this process with SGC because of your faster turnaround time. In theory, you can do this 3 to 4 times over while it takes PSA the time to grade that single Ellie De La Cruz card, which means that in all reality, you could profit $60 to $80 compared to the PSA 41. Now, this is not a perfect example because you're not guaranteed to get a 10. That's one huge flag. You might get some 9s, and then you're going to, not necessarily profit. But with PSA, if you get a 9, well, you just spent 6 to 8 weeks waiting to get that 9. Whereas SGC, if you get that, you can sell that card and then go reinvest it somewhere else to hopefully get yourself a 10 where you're able to profit some money there. So the opportunity cost for me is the big consideration with PSA versus SGC. Again, with one asterisk, and that's the high-end market. Now, we all know is what we saw. PSA has a higher value than SGC in the market. Whether or not that should be, is everybody can debate. However, the market is the market, and the price differential is there very, very clearly. The market values a PSA 10 more than an SGC 10, but on high-end cards, there's an even bigger gap to consider. So the SGC 10, this was a 10-10 too. So the PSA one didn't have an auto grade. The SGC one did have the auto grade. Now, the SGC sold for $2,000. Actually, it was just under that. It was in 1980. The PSA 10 sold for $6,500. So that's a $4,500 market difference just because it was a PSA 10 versus an SGC 10. So that's crazy. For high-end cards, there can be a very big gap when it comes to PSA versus SGC. So my approach, what do I do personally with me and my card business? Generally, if we're talking SGC, I'm sending low to mid-end cards. My priority there is turnaround time. One thing we have not talked about as well is the 9.5 grade, and that's the PSA. PSA only does 10 gem mint or 9 mint. There's no middle ground there. SGC, you can get a mint plus, which is a 9.5. I personally like that because it provides a higher floor for my submission. If I think that it can get a 10, if for whatever reason it just barely doesn't hit the threshold of a 10, I can still get a 9.5, which I find for me on my Whatnot streams, this kind of last point here, that 9.5 will outsell a PSA 9. On Whatnot, I actually find that I do perfectly fine with the SGC slabs versus PSA. There still is a PSA 10 premium, don't get me wrong there. But there's maybe not as much as there is on eBay or other marketplaces. So for me, that's another consideration of where I'm selling the cards. But that 9.5 safety net does matter as well because it helps me just have a little bit more wiggle room if I pick a card that maybe isn't perfect and doesn't hit the gem mint 10. And then for PSA, my priority is high end and the priority is profit. If it is a big time card, expensive, there is the big upside. That Jackson Merrill Cosmic Auto. You pull that, I'm sending it to PSA. I don't care because seeing that market gap and differential is crazy. I don't care about the turnaround time because the turnaround time doesn't matter because I have to pay more to get it graded. Yes, am I paying more to get it graded? Sure. But is the $4,500 extra profit worth it therefore? Also yes. So generally, you're going to see me send nicer stuff to PSA and some of the low, more mid-end stuff to SGC. And for me, the turnaround time really does matter because I need to get cards into my streams, and I sell 40 to 50 slabs a week right now, minimum. So keeping up with that is really hard, and the SGC turnaround time definitely makes that a lot easier. So that's my approach. The other thing that we have not talked about is, well, if it's just for your collection, grade with whoever you like. PSA and SGC are the two big players in the game right now. I know a lot of people that love the SGC slab. I know a lot of people that hate the SGC slab. If you're grading for a personal collection and not grading for the purpose of market value gain, then I always say grade with whoever you like. I recommend grading with somebody who has some market relevance or at least trustworthiness, not some no-name grading company that's in some dude's basement. But if it's for a personal collection, do what you like because it's your collection and that's what matters most. So I hope that this was helpful in terms of the SGC versus PSA question. It's always a debate, but this is my approach. And one other question that you might get, I know we were talking about other grading companies, is, well, what about Beckett? Beckett used to be the top dog in the space. They used to be the king when it came to grading. A Beckett 9.5 used to outsell a PSA 10. Yes, believe that or not, it did. But Beckett has really fallen off lately in terms of their turnaround times, their value, their pricing, and the market has really punished them for that. They're grading a lot less. If you look at the rates, I'm going to throw up on screen here actually some of the monthly number of cards that these companies are grading, and you can see the decline that Beckett is having right now is pretty significant. And that comes with a gap and decrease in their market value as well. So personally, when you look at Beckett right now, the turnaround time for the price that they're charging is just plain and simply not worth it, full stop. If you're going to send for market value gain, send it to PSA, send it to SGC. That's your simple solution. Those are the two that you're going to bring. It's going to bring you the most return on your investment. So as I said, I hope this helps. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm curious, who is your go-to grading company? Let me know down in those comments. Appreciate you guys checking out the video. Catch you in the next one.